Welcome to the Redcaps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. In today's episode, I am joined by four amazing guests, the hosts of Save for Half. As you know, no mortal can outrun a Redcap, so I hope you can sit back, listen, and enjoy. Save or Die was one of the first podcasts in the RPG space that I ever really listened to. And when the hosts moved on from that show to create their own, called Save for Half, I followed along. Mike, Liz, Jim, and Corbett are hilariously funny people who love games, this hobby, and are just excellent examples of everything that's great about the OSR space. As you listen to this, if nothing else, I hope you get a few chuckles and you get to know these four a little bit better. Before I throw it over to the interview, there is 1 week remaining in the Child Hero Contest. If you visit www.threadcaps.net, pick your communication method, let it be voicemail, email, Discord, carrier pigeons, smoke signals, doesn't matter. Get a hold of me in whatever way you can and send me either a voice or text message telling me who your favorite child-aged hero is. That person could be Harry Potter, it could be Kevin McAllister, it could be Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes. All valid entries. Just drop me a note, tell me who it is and why. You could end up winning $25 gift card from DriveThruRPG, a $25 gift card to Ratty and Canati. 3 different people are going to win a copy, either PDF or physical, their choice, of the Face Folio by Goblin's Henchman. So lots of great prizes. If you'd like to get a bonus entry to the contest, and you're able to, consider donating to Extra Life. Again, link will be on the website. I'll be donating $25 in the winner's name as well. And the single largest donation I will match up to $100. If you donate, that gets you an extra entry into the contest. Donations to Extra Life help fund the Toronto Sick Kids Hospital, and they do amazing, amazing work. So that's really the whole reason I'm doing the contest. But I think it's fantastic to be able to spread around some of these gift cards and hear all the cool entries that are coming in. All right, folks, time to get over to this conversation with these fantastic people. They used to make you save or die, but they've kind of mellowed out in their old age, and now it's just Save for Half. Take it away, folks. All right, folks, I am joined by the Save for Half podcast, the entire Save for Half podcast. We've got Corbett, we've got Jim, we've got Mike, we've got Liz. I don't know if
billing.
You're in the top corner, so you get it right away. But yeah, no, this is a group of people that I have been listening to for ages. You four are responsible, either directly or indirectly, for this podcast existing between you guys and Glenn with Radio Grognard. Listening to those podcasts, I went, well, if those goofs can do it, surely I can.
and send all complaints to saveforhalfpodcast@gmail.com.
So we're opening with the truth bomb. Boom! If you guys can do it, anybody can.
But no, in all seriousness, no, I have been listening for ages and ages, since the old podcast and into the new one. And it's been really, really awesome listening to the four of you discuss all the things. My wife probably does not agree as much on long road trips, and I have the podcast and back episodes playing. And she's like, at a certain point, she just looks over at me and goes, "Can we listen to something else?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there's headphones. Grab them."
We apologize to her.
But I wanted to ask, how did you guys get started? So that's how I got started, listening to you guys and going and saying, all right, this is something that I think I could do. It's a nice creative output. I'm not a person that's going to make rule sets or very many adventures that I'm ever going to put in the world, but I can yabber on about stuff. How did you guys get into this?
I'm going to throw it to Mike and Liz. I'm going to throw it to Mike and Liz because the way I got started was listening to them.
Vince Florio of Roll for Initiative podcast basically shanghaied Mike and I into doing a new podcast with him, which was called Save or Die. Neither Mike nor I had ever had any podcast experience. And I normally don't listen to podcasts myself, so I wasn't even a listener when I was asked to start doing this. I was coming in totally cold and had no idea what in the world I was doing. And I'm pretty sure those really early episodes of Save or Die, it shows that I had no idea what the heck I was doing.
I won't even listen to my early recordings.
No.
Nope.
I try to pretend those don't happen.
Yeah,
they never happened.
I know the feel. I think it's the same with anybody who does any sort of a creative work. If you go back and look at your earlier stuff, it's always kind of like a cringe, but everybody started with something, and I guess it's you use it as a badge of honor. Go, look how bad I was then and how great I am now.
The arc of improvement.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you can flip that around when you're mentoring younglings coming in wanting to do it. Is just remind them none of us came out of the chute knowing how to do any of this.
Yeah, if you don't fall down, you don't ever get back up, right? So you got to fall down a few times to build that up. Corbett and Jim, what about you two?
I think next in line would be Jim, because he was the next person to join the podcast. I was the last.
We're gonna go.
Do you want me to go?
Chronological.
Because I can blame you twice.
Let me get my licks in, and then you can have that.
Okay.
No, I just was just getting back into gaming after one of those periodic layoffs, and one of the things that was going on at the time was I'd gotten sucked up into, I want to say this very carefully, the second TSR, the one Jason Elliott created Gygax magazine for, and I'd gotten sucked up into that, and that got me invited onto Safe or Die, which at that time when I came on was Glenn and Liz and Mike, and I warned them up front, I'm just like the cat at the screen door. If you feed me once, I'll just never go away and keep showing up. And they kindly invited me back, and I turned into one of the hosts, and then you know how it goes. We started liking each other and being friends and crap, and once you do that, you're stuck. Until I quit, and then Corbett showed up.
But you couldn't say quit. You couldn't stay away, though.
Yep. He came right back after, what, 3-4 episodes? It seems like he came back really quick. I was thinking
it was a little more than that, but yeah, I think it was like the first 8 or 10, maybe, and then he's back.
I got my first full-time job working for a game company and got a little overexcited, and then quickly realized I'd screwed up and came begging back. Please, I'll be fourth banana. I don't care.
One of the things I like about listening to the four of you go on is that it feels like a group of people around a table, like a party of players actually that have been playing together for a while, and the banter that you guys have with each other. Was it difficult to get that chemistry built up? Was it something that took a long while, or was it you guys just kind of clicked right away and went that route?
Well, I think part of it is we clicked. I remember when Vince first told us that we were going to be, you will be having Jim on your show, and he will be the next host. And I'm like, no, he'll be the host if we like him. And we had him on, and it's like, yeah, okay, we like him. So
you're shattering all my dreams and illusions. I had no idea.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, I thought I told you. Yeah, because he wanted you on because of Gygax magazine, and we're like, okay, cool, And then it's like, well, now he's going to be a host, and I'm like, well, we'll see. And we had you on again. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, this will work.
That's totally true.
Well, the thing with Corbett, we knew him from before.
Way back.
Way back. So
at the dawn of time.
Yeah. So he was not a stranger to us when we asked him to be a part of Save for Half with us. And we had also been guests on his own podcast at the time, the Gagmen podcast. So he had us on his show before as well. And Mike and I already knew we had a pretty good online chemistry with him doing that show. It's like, this is a pretty sure thing, and we know him, so let's see if he'll do the show with us. And fortunately he said yes.
But to be fair, Jim did bail on you.
He had things to do. They were very important things.
No, they totally were, and he's made some amazing stuff because of that. But it's like, I guess I'm the second option, which is good. I'm probably I feel like I'm the second option and not the fourth.
Au contraire, you were the first option for Save for Half. So no.
One of the things that I hear on your guys' podcasts a lot, generally around summertime, obviously for the reason of what it is, and that's all the talk about conventions and the most importantly, I guess, is North Texas RPG convention. I have not been. I was intended to go this past summer, but with how everything that we just came out of and the uncertainty of how traveling out of this country and into that one goes, I was like, I'm going to pass for this year and try to go next year. But I've only been to a couple of really small cons, small ones like, they've got like 10, 12 gaming tables, and that's about it. Sell me on bigger conventions. What's the experience like? Why do you guys seem to like them so much? And outside of North Texas, which is on my list, what other ones would you say that, if any, that I should probably check out?
I'm probably the worst person to ask because I don't like really big conventions. North Texas, they have a cap of 500, and that is just right for me, size-wise. Anything that gets much larger than that, I start feeling claustrophobic. Mike and I went to GaryCon a few years back, and it's even bigger now than it was when we went. But GaryCon was a little too big for me when we went, although we did have a good time when we went. So I guess it really depends on what your personal definition of a large convention is, because my definition of a large convention is probably a lot smaller than a lot of other people's definition.
Yeah, I think that GaryCon was around 2,000 people that year.
Yeah, that might be a bit much for me as well. I like individuals, large crowds. Sometimes aren't necessarily my thing, but I think that part of the draw of North Texas for me as well is that cap of around 500 people.
Right. It's enough people, so there's always games going on if you want to find a game to just hop into or something. There's a full schedule, but yet you don't feel like a crush in the crowd,
That GaryCon you guys came to was more like 3,000 or 4,000. It had hit one of its growth spurts, which, as you said, has happened again a couple of times. But you guys came all the way to GaryCon. I'm one of the special guests, and we never saw each other. That's the beauty of North Texas Con. All four of us can hang out as much as we want, have dinner together. Other people were there to see, Darlene, whoever, you can hang out with them. And you're liable to end up at a table at that scale playing with Errol Otis, and he's not even running the game. He's right beside you playing a half or something.
Yeah. Or you could just walk up to a table, see a luminary, and go, "Hey, what's going on?" And they'll talk to you. It's pretty cool.
That's one thing I've discovered, not so much from a con, obviously, but from the community at large. It's been amazing. This month, I've been trying to. Part of the whole reason I'm doing the interviews, I've done a couple of interviews in the past in the podcast, but most of the time it's just me sitting there talking as if I know what I'm talking about. But I figured this month I was going to focus on a lot more interviews because in the anchor sphere of podcasting, a few of us had gotten together and there had been a conversation about, why does it seem like there's always so much negative influence onto or negative talk about the OSR? And I was like, well, I said, because most of the circles I'm in with it, there isn't the negative side of things. Most everybody seems to be getting along pretty well. So I was like, all right, well, then maybe people just aren't hearing those same voices. They're only seeing stuff from social media or something. So I was like, let's highlight some of the people that I think are friendly and positive and make it fun for me, and maybe it'll help showcase some of that. And when I started thinking about that, I'm like, well, how am I ever going to get hold of some of these people, and will they even talk to me type idea? And I was amazed by how almost without a doubt, there's been a couple that just, and more due to scheduling reasons, wasn't able to work out, but almost every single person I've reached out to and asked comes back immediately. It's just like, yeah. And for me, it was a little bit of a starstruck thing. Like I've got, I had Chris Gonerman on earlier. I've got Matt Finch coming on later on this week, and a few other folks. And I'm just like, everybody was so willing and generous with their time. So when you say that you could just like kind of walk up to somebody at con and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" I can completely see that just on the responses I've got when reaching out to people that, from my perspective, is kind of like, oh, it's that person.
I understand you. When I first met Gary Gygax, I was just, I was blown away. I was so nervous. I hardly wanted to talk, but I made myself. And in very short order, you realize he's just a gamer too. They're all just gamers. Yep. And once you figure that out, it's kind of like, oh, okay. Just talk to him like any other gamer. And usually that works out pretty well.
Yeah, you do that, and pretty soon you're peeing with Frank Menser right after. It's
Yes, the infamous.
Which ticket class do I have to buy to pee with?
Just hang around the urinals. He'll show up eventually. He's a very chatty guy in the bathroom.
Good stuff.
Or worse, you end up the guy responsible for keeping Tim Kask's Windows 10 machine working when he gets too clicky on it.
I have had the pleasure of playing with Tim before via one of his online games, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, he was a really great guy just to sit and chat with as well. He was again somebody who he had a bunch of games scheduled, but I think he still ran over on almost every one of them because he'd sit there and just chat with us and talk about various things. It was great.
Yeah, like any gamer would.
Exactly.
More seriously, I tend to go for the easy, low-hanging joke fruit. 12 years ago, I just walked in a game store for an author event for a webcomic. I had 4 episodes up, and they'd also invited Tim. I'm like, hey, Tim Kask, remember me? I'm the little 19-year-old that aggravated you into publishing my cartoons in Adventure Gaming Magazine. Nope, don't remember you. And, from there to now, he's like my best friend on the planet.
Yeah, he's been great. That's actually somebody else I should reach out to. I did not reach out to him. I'm not sure if he does a whole lot of interviews or not. But I watch his.
Oh, he lives for that stuff. He'd love to do it.
Yeah, I watch his YouTube channel all the time. I just didn't think to bring him on for an audio, but yeah, make a note. Your guys' last episode was for me really kind of fun too, because I've been going before October, so into late September. I was going through and doing stuff on Melee, Wizard, the Fantasy Trip, and then you guys released your episode. And I was like, they scooped me. But
hey, I've been trying to do that for over a year. It just it just dug up eventually.
Honestly, I thought you've been pushing to do that since the beginning. You had mentioned Melee.
Well, I was being polite, yeah, but it was always like, we need to do Fantasy Trip. Oh, but first I want to do, and, yeah.
Well, I own the big box set, the giant re-release box set that they came out with there a few years back, and I hadn't played it with anybody. I've played Melee and Wizard solo a few times, but I've never sat down at a table and played with anybody with the rule set at all. And so I was like, I need to put something out just so people can hear about it, 'cause I never hear anybody talking about that rule set. And for me, it was the OSR version of GURPS was how I've sold it to everybody. And I had a GURPS player who was also kind of interested in it, who's on another podcast. We sat down and we played through just a little battle, two fighters and a wizard, just in an arena fight, trying with all the skills and spells from In the Labyrinth, and it was a lot of fun. So I don't know if you guys actually had a chance to play it against each other at all, but if you do, it is quite fun. The only thing I would say that wasn't fun of all the ones I tried out was Wizard via Wizard. Like, so if you just play with like a couple of wizards on the battlefield, that felt very much like first shot wins. Like
that was one of the things Jim was.
There is a way to do that if you know the rules.
Yeah, they do have that gentleman agreement rule or whatever that's in the game, but it just still felt like whoever struck first is going to end up winning in that game when it came with Wizard. But having them all mixed up was a lot of fun, and I liked listening to your guys' take on it as well. And I'm nodding along. Some of it I was like, no, I like this game better than it seems like you guys like it, but it was still a lot of fun hearing how you guys went on it.
Oh, I liked it. Don't get me wrong. I would happily play it again. It just, most people go, hey, let's play Fantasy Trip. What? What's that? What's Melee? What's Wizard? Yeah? What are you talking about?
I bet you I haven't played it since the summer of '83, but the summer of '83, we burned it to the ground over and over and over.
I think it was '85 that was the last time I played it.
Yeah, I did not play it anywhere close to that time frame. But that's because I was in 83 and 85. In 83 and 85, I was still barely getting around mastering the whole walking and talking and stuff.
Hey, you youngsters!
But Fantasy Trip is a fantastic example of what you would call an old school game, but an item that's difficult to define is OSR. There's constantly that nerd debate, which is meaningless, but it is a complete nerd debate.
You just made the point. Why though? Why does OSR so hard to define, and why does everybody squabble over what it means? Is because OSR to I happen to know us was 79 and Brown Books and AD&D and the Holmes box set. OSR for somebody else is Mold They Cook, Red Box, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and 30 years from now there'll be an OSR for 5th edition. So it's a moving target. What's old school to you, and then it loops because younger people get interested in some of the characteristics and get attracted to old school and back the other way.
Yeah, I agree there.
It's very ephemeral.
Yeah, it's difficult. And there's a whole lot of one influences the other. So you'll have a game that comes out that was influenced by an original, and then another game comes out was influenced by the game that was influenced by the original. And it's like photocopying a photocopy. At a certain point, it becomes something different. But if you had to, if I held you down and said, give me a definition from each of you of what it is to you, what would you throw out there?
Let's start with Corbett.
Okay, sure.
You're not talking enough.
Neither is Liz.
Hey, I've said lots of things already on this show.
Oh, fine. Well, I mean, you could pinpoint and say, oh, it's anything past a certain time. I think a lot of people have always said anything before 3rd edition. I kind of pinpoint it to the idea. Like when I reached, I don't know, probably 85 to 89, when I started realizing the real secret to the rules is you don't need them. They're just a guideline or something. I don't know, but it's and that's the OSR to me, is that you could take new rules, you could take old rules. They're just rules. You can throw them out. It's the game you play, and so I guess that's OSR to me. Is that a meaning? I don't know. Liz, you go.
Okay.
Playing hot potato here.
Well, I guess when I think of the OSR, I think of those early days when we all got together on message boards to share our love and nostalgia for the games that we played.
Dragon's Foot.
Yeah, Mike and I were both on Dragon's Foot back when it was small. And you could actually keep up with the daily posts on there, before it became the huge behemoth of a message board that it is now. And I haven't been on Dragon's Foot in years because it's just too big now and I can't keep up with daily posts. But yeah, it was a smaller community. We mostly all knew each other, at least by our screen names. And it felt like we all had a stake in where things were going. Being part of the playtesters for Castles and Crusades before it became a published item. It was kind of exciting back then. And I think that we're really soiled for choice now in the number of retro clones that are out there, the adventures, the supplements that you can get for whatever game system you're interested in playing. You can find things that are being published by small publishers right now that can breathe new life into those old games that you like. And so big companies like TSR are recognizing us as a viable consumer base and trying to, do things for us as well as for the younger audience.
Or Wizards of the Coast, anyway.
Yeah. So it's like, I miss those old first days, but I'm glad that they're gone because it's a testament of how successful old school Renaissance, Revolution, whatever the R in OSR means to you, it's done so well, and we've got a lot for it.
So who you throwing the hot potato to?
Jim.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to my guns. I think OSR is enjoying playing or writing and designing any game system that mimics the first game systems you imprinted on. It's like Doctor Who. Everybody's favorite Doctor Who tends to be the first one they imprinted on. That's human nature. So that can wiggle and move around, but for us, it's what's laughingly called rules light. Those rules in the DMG were not light, but that's what we thought because we didn't really read them or use them. We just played we just DM'd the way we were DM'd. But so in broad categories, you can say, okay, the commonly accepted view of old school OSR games is higher risk, higher reward, greater chance of death, more simpler rules, simpler options, less skills, less classes, and things like that. Keep it simple. And that's that at the age I am now, that appeals to me because it's very close to what I imprinted on. But when I was young, man, give me a shoebox full of D6s and let's spend the rest of the day making a champions character. You couldn't make it crunchy enough for me back then. So it's kind of hypocritical to say I still like the same things now that I did when I was 19 or whatever. But that's it to me. Just it's a recreation of the play style preferences you imprinted on when you started gaming, and that can be different for lots of people.
I guess it's my turn
Mike?
now, huh?
Clean up better.
No pressure.
I'll say
Send all the runners home.
Well, for starters, I think the definition of OSR being pre-2000 was first created in 2004, 2003. So that made a lot more sense when we talk now about pre-2000. It's like, well, that was 22 years ago. It's a little different now. But if I had to narrow down OSR to what it means to me, it's rulings, not rules. Rules are there to help you, but they're not a straitjacket, sort of like Corbett was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody I knew on Dragon's Foot, T. Foster, once said that, you need to understand how grenade-like missiles work in AD&D, not so that you can use them as written in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but so that you know what the expectation is of how it should act, so that when you make it up, you can get close to what the players are expecting. And that's what I mean. It's guidelines. This gives you a structure. It's much more useful to people who just start, especially start DMing. But when you're our age, it's like, this is old hat. We don't need all this. And God help us from the person, and they're there in the OSR too. Well, it clearly says on page 322 of Player's Handbook 9 that you can't do that. No. Your character's dead. A wagon full of eggs fell on his head. He's dead. We're in a dungeon. I don't care.
Yeah, I agree. I like the rulings, not rules kind of lean towards it. I've always kind of classically said that OSR as when I try to define it, I look at it as like a genre, right? So I want something.
Mm-hmm.
I try to nail down a definition just so that whenever I'm having a conversation about a genre, there's a common understanding, and that's I think the biggest source of arguments in that space is that because we just had all four of you had very different answers for the same thing. So I find it's interesting when four people who all enjoy the same thing but have very different answers on what it is, it's easy for there to be room for misunderstandings or disagreements. So that's why I've always tried to push to go, okay, what is it actually? So we could if we were talking about horror movies, if I said, hey, I watched this really cool horror movie the other day, you guys got to go see it. Top Gun. It was amazing. You guys would all look at me like I was crazy because you'd be like, why are you using that's not a horror movie, because everybody has a common understanding of what a horror movie is.
Yeah.
And I think you can have, you can say tabletop role-playing game and everybody's cool. Everything underneath this umbrella we understand. And you can say fantasy tabletop role-playing game. And everybody generally will have some sort of an agreement on that. And you could even say like old school style. And you might lose some people, but you probably keep most. But as soon as you get down to OSR, it seems like there's a lot of loss on what it is. So I've typically tried to say, if I can keep on the Borderlands with it, if I can pick up your rule set and play keep on the Borderlands without having to do a ton of conversion prep, it's probably old school OSR. If I can still play it, but I got to change a bunch of stuff, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it might not be OSR. It might be an indie game that is in the fantasy subgenre. That's
right. And the problem with defining OSR as rules light is back in the day, like Jim
look at
implied.
AD&D.
Oh, chivalry and sorcery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Palladium fantasy. There were crunch all the way back in the day. So, but simply saying rules light doesn't quite cover it.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to switch off of that from one contentious subject to one I'm sure everybody's going to agree on, given something that was told to me before in the snicker before we started recording. What's everybody's favorite campaign setting? Or rather put, before actually what I was actually wanting to ask about this is, I think that even if you don't play campaign settings, if you're of the mindset everybody should build their own world, which I'm very partial to as well, I think most of us can agree that there have been some really amazing worlds that were built back in the day, whether it be the known world or even the realms, although I'm not a big fan of that now. There were some really big, amazing worlds built. But since about the year 2000, when we've had the internet, we've had all the collaboration tools in the world, I haven't seen any projects that have really made a world size setting out there. And I'm wondering, do you guys have any that maybe I've missed, or do you have a theory on why that is, or is there anything along those lines? I guess kind of again throw that grenade out and let everybody jump on it.
When you say "quote unquote" recently, and I assume you mean since 2000,
yeah,
do you mean totally new campaigns, or do you mean like taking an older campaign and rehashing it?
No, I mean like somebody making a whole new world. So like the only one I can think of where there's generally speaking an entire world would be Pathfinder setting, maybe would fall into that, where I'm pretty sure that was all after 2000. And there's other settings like say the Midderlands, which is an amazing setting, but it probably isn't quite on the same scale. But I can't think of anything on
Troll Lords Aired. I found on the whole the campaign isn't quite my cup of tea, because it kind of leans into Grimm's fairy tales a bit, but it's got individual setting books or campaign locations that I occasionally find interesting.
Anybody else, or does anybody want to chastise me for bringing up a campaign setting?
No, I'll answer your question, even though the answer is obvious. My favorite campaign setting is mine, but I can argue for why I chose to put the levers on the panel where I did. I imprinted on Gamma World, so I like post-apocalyptic setting, both for its very close ties to the medieval fantasy setting in structure, and because I grew up on a bunch of those books and movies and comics. Commandy, Last Boy on Earth. I was 12 when that came out. I was perfect age for it, but I like a specific. I personally prefer a specific post-apocalypse where it's 10,000 years later, and it's more like a Brian Aldiss book than Damnation Alley or the Omega Man. It's way in the future, because that brings back more genre mashable items that are similar to D&D. You can have jungles and apes. The apes have 2 heads and 4 arms, but still crazy apes and and stuff like that. Sunnier post-apocalypse, and it's very, and I just like that setting because it matches so many books I read and so many of the books that are in Gary's Appendix N. It's very pulpy, and I'm not arguing against I can never pronounce this word, verisimilitude. That's important, but it can be very hand wavy. What's the difference between a silicon golem and an android? No difference. That's my favorite for those reasons, because you're just a party of people doing the same thing, exploring the wilderness, exploring underground ruins, killing monsters and taking their stuff. And you can certainly fan that up into as much political intrigue and global politics as you want to, but I don't find those fun. I'm not one for. I got drugged kicking and screaming into my first chainmail game, and I had a great time, but it's not my scene to do mass combat on a global scale, even though I'm getting ready to run a game that's the exact scenario at GameOCon. give the people what they want.
Liz or Corbett?
Go ahead.
Favorite campaign setting?
Actually, do you mean in D&D or do you mean just anything?
No, anything. I
Okay.
think anything. I mean, for me, I lean more towards D&D because that's the style game I play. But I mean, if you've got a fantastic traveler setting or something, that's just as equally valid. I think I'm probably just biased because I generally play more of a fantasy style game. But
Oh, I could have mentioned Victorious then. Oh well.
Yeah, soups count as a genre.
Yeah, totally.
Oh well.
But yeah, it depends on my mood, I guess. If I'm playing fantasy role playing, then I guess my favorite would probably be the original Greyhawk setting, and I also really enjoy the Judges Guild City State of the Invincible Overlord supplement.
Yeah.
So drop City State into Greyhawk, and that's my perfect world.
can we bring Thieves World in too? 'Cause I really enjoyed that one from Judges Guild.
I guess. I mean, I liked the first few Thieves World novels, but they kind of jumped the shark for me after about the 5th one. But I really enjoyed the early Thieves World.
When all the authors were busy trying to kill each other's characters. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, for fantasy, that if I was playing steampunk, it would be Mike's Victorious game. If I was playing science fiction, I don't know that there is an established world setting for Traveler, but I like the kind of gritty feel that Traveler gives.
Yeah, there's the Third Imperium, but again, it
yeah.
dates back to the 70s. So
yeah, so that.
Get you playing Traveler and give you a rocket pony. I bet you'd be happy as a clam.
I would love a Galaxy Rangers robot horse.
And Corbett?
I would say one of my first go-tos is Star Wars. Just because a long time ago, I was at a convention and a couple of guys were like,
you teed that up and you didn't finish. I'm very long time ago, and then you just come on.
In a convention far
away.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was at a convention and guys were like, "Hey, let's play Star Wars." Like, okay, I guess. And I had played it once or twice before because I wanted to try it out. And it's a really unusual system, but it lends itself to just bouncy fun and running around. And we would play like for 30 minutes or 10 minutes in between another game. And we'd go to the next game at the convention and come back on like, hey, want to play some more Star Wars? Let's go. And so it felt a lot like the way Mandalorian, I guess, comes across to most people. Like, oh, yeah, we're these sort of gunfighters out in space doing our thing. And Galaxy Rangers, you have that sort of fun. And that's that world that Star Wars was in 1990 or so, I guess, but it's different now. But
or not Mandalorian.
Yeah, true. But no, I always love a superhero game, so I never tire of it. And superhero games in general are always fun because I like playing heroics. Just like, honestly, Jim and me have a lot of that in common, where we like the pulp action, and that's just bound in every superhero game. Fantasy-wise, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
You and I are very close, where we like it. We like our cake and eat it too. I think we both enjoy a good murder hobo party, which could be Star Wars or D&D or Game World. But then there's a time and a place for, okay, let's be the good guys and save Metropolis or whatever.
Yeah, something about that.
I thought of a relatively modern one that I liked, but I'll mention it after you're done.
Okay, you can do the Jerry Springer wrap up. No. Fantasy wise, I kind of lean towards Liz's statement that Greyhawk's been pretty fun. But one I never got to play, but I was always fascinated by was Birthright. It was sort of the Nobles D&D game. I don't know if you've ever even read it, but it's a
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, basically, basically Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
D&D. It was TSR. I don't remember when Birthright
Only
came
less
out.
incest.
So you think?
Well, yeah, I never actually.
I don't know what kind of games you were playing, but
I'll definitely have to put that one up on the chopping block at some point because I've really never got to play it. It's always one I was fascinated with as a world build. But anyway, there you go.
Okay.
Worlds.
I do have one dimension. It was a Mutants and Masterminds campaign. I picked up some of the books about 5-7 years ago, and it's called War Games. And it's a superhero campaign where everyone is playing superheroes set in the 1980s.
Oh, okay.
So you've got stuff in there. You've got some plays on Top Gun. You've got some plays on... there's a pseudo shield there with, doing their thing. They've even got a supplement where they deal with a obvious ersatz G.I. Joe and Cobra. Obviously, they couldn't call them that. They called them House of the Serpent, I think, instead of Cobra.
And everyone has a pager.
Yeah, big pagers. Or you have a cell phone, but it's the size of a World War II walkie-talkie. Just these huge things.
I love going back and watching older movies where you see that featured.
Oh yeah.
Where I grew up, nobody had any of those. I don't think the first time I saw one that looked like what you see there is probably in a movie. I don't think I saw anybody that lived.
Yeah, me either. But then I grew up in North Mississippi, so there you go.
Yeah.
Wash that layer. But yeah, they've got and they even have like sections to explain, assuming that many of the players not being really around in the 80s would need to update as far as skills, abilities, the world around you. Very, of course, Cold War. But I know what you mean. Like in going back to watch War Games, the movie is just hilarious when you hear those 300 baud modems kick on. It's like, oh wow, oh I remember those. They were so cute.
Yeah, I remember being so upset, being a few hours into a download that I left running overnight, and then next morning my mother picking up the telephone in the house.
Oh yeah.
I mean, why?
Oh, yeah. No. Or better, I had a data set for my Commodore 64, so I want to play a game, so I put the cassette in, start it loading, go watch TV or something for half an hour, and then come in to see if the game's ready to play.
Yeah, my old TSR 80, we had the cassette tape on it as well, and same thing. I would before supper, I would load the tape, go down, have supper, do the dishes, come back up, and then have time to play the game.
Yep. Yeah.
It was the best of times. It was the Douglas Adams of times. We all thought a digital watch was a pretty good idea.
Pretty neat idea, yeah.
All right, I've got only a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. I've got one specifically for Liz and then another round table one. So the one for Liz I've got is you've got at some level a background in graphic design and layout and that sort of thing. Most popular OSR game out right now, I think, is largely sold based on the fact that it's laid out really well. That everybody talks about how pretty Old School Essentials is from the way it's laid out and the way Gavin handles everything. How important do you think layout is to a game if you're picking it up? And is that something that people need to pay more attention to if they're going into indie publishing or what have you?
I think a good layout can help your game stand out from the crowd. And also a bad layout, it's how exactly to put it. If you have a really good layout, most people are not going to notice it at all. They're going to pick up the game, they're going to read it, they're going to buy it. They're not going to think about whether or not the layout is good. But if the layout is bad, a good layout is very noticeable by its absence only. So it's one of those, you can break your back, doing an excellent layout, and 90% of the people who pick up the end product are not going to notice, and they're not going to give the layout artist kudos in their head, because it's just, because it's good, it doesn't register to them. So it's kind of an iffy deal.
You preach it, Soul.
Yeah.
But a bad one.
But yeah, a bad one you notice right away. I find layout more important now that I am older, because it is harder for my 50-something-year-old eyes now to read small text. Things that I did not have a problem with when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I'll try to look at those texts now, and I was like, oh my god, I can't even read this, and I got to put my reading glasses on. It's like, So yeah, readability is much more important to me now than it was back in the day. And also, when I am doing stuff that's going to get turned into a PDF, I'm also a lot more interested and cognizant now of how this is going to be accessible to people who are using screen readers.
For obvious reasons.
If you are not paying attention to how your text in InDesign or whatever it is you're using, formats over to PDF, a screen reader could wind up reading the text on the page out of order, because it was out of order in your InDesign layout to start with. So that's something that I think about now that I would not have thought about, say 30 years ago as well.
And that sucks.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. There's a fellow podcaster, Joe, who his podcast is Hindsightless, and he has a lot of vision issues. Thus the name of the podcast. And he's often talked about that. He's wanting to run a Cyberpunk 2020 game, I think. And he's been going on about how difficult it is to. He knows the rule set. He's played it back in the day when he still had a lot of his vision, but now that his vision's a lot more poor, he's having a real hard time because the books just aren't laid out in a way, and the PDFs just don't work. And I wonder if you'll see that happening with some games like Morkborg or some more of these art house style games where they are visually stunning. And a zine book that I love is Knock. It's beautifully laid out, and it's got a lot of from an artistic standpoint, it's beautiful. But I wonder, I haven't tried putting Knock through a screen reader or something, but I wonder how many of those games or books will have issues being accessible to folks. And I think it's something that people don't really think about that much. And I'm glad you mentioned it. I was going to ask you about that directly, actually, and you took it away on me. So.
Yeah, and one thing that I personally have had a problem with in the instances where I do layout, you'll probably know most game supplements and adventures modules, sidebar text is very, very popular in layouts, but it can be extremely difficult to make the sidebar text read in a screen reader order that would make sense to someone using a screen reader, because somebody can't just pop over to the sidebar and then back to the main text the way a sighted person would be able to do. And it's something that I have wrestled with to try to get the sidebar placed in a way that it still kind of makes some kind of sense to the screen reader and doesn't completely, you're reading the main text and then suddenly you go to the sidebar and the main text for that page cut off in the middle of a sentence, and now suddenly you're on the sidebar. It's like, what? So that's difficult to figure out from a screen reader perspective, doing layout.
No, that's a good note, because I know there's a lot of folks that with how easy it is, easy in air quotes, it is to self-publish stuff now, or quickly put something together and have it up on whatever marketplace you wish to use. it's a good thing to keep in mind, because I think there's a lot of people that miss that.
You guys mind if I talk about? Do you guys mind if I talk about an episode we plan to record but haven't actually recorded?
No, I'm cool.
Exclusive. Go for it.
Well, no, because it's very germane to what we're talking about. We are going to do an episode on James V. West Gozer game, which is wonderful. But the problem with it was that it's a rule set that's entirely presented in cartoon handwriting. Every page. If you can see it, it's gorgeous. But if you have to use a reader, the reader can't deal with hand printed cartoon comic book text. And so we wanted to do it badly enough that we just reached out to JV West to see if he had maybe just had a manuscript that he used that we could all read and review, and found out that as an independent publisher, JV was already on the job and mostly done. He was working on it. He just hadn't released it yet, an OCR version of his cartoon comic book RPG. And that's the power of the indie publishing and some of the third-party publishers, because we don't have the, it doesn't have, WotC would have to just engage, a whole room full of people to accomplish this.
You have reached Wizards customer service. Your call is important to us.
And that game is impressive. I haven't touched it, but I did watch Questing Beast recently did an episode on it in the last day or so, actually. So if you haven't seen it and you just want to kind of get a visual flip through that, it's very pretty that way. But I'm interested to hear your guys' take on it when you go to do the episode. All right, my last bit of questions, and then I'll let you all go. Liz, since I just asked you one, I usually ask at the end of a podcast for the people I'm having a conversation with to tell me what they wished I would have asked, or what they don't get asked very often. But you guys have your own show, and you all intertalk a lot. What's something I'm going to ask you to tell me something that should be asked of Corbett, and then I'll get Corbett to do the same thing, and we'll go around. So what if somebody is not familiar with Corbett, what should they ask him? Or what would you ask Corbett if you're going to interview him?
Oh, I'd probably ask him when he's ever going to try to bring who he can of the gang back for more episodes of Gagman podcast, but I know that's a sticky subject, but Gagman was really a very excellent show, and it was like herding cats, and Corbett did a lot of work editing those things down to something manageable, but the end products were gorgeous, and they put out free episodes, or not episodes, but
adventures,
free adventures, because all of them would get together, sometimes with a guest, sometimes just the four of them, and they would round robin and basically create an adventure during the show. And then the show would be released. They would write up the adventure that they created and have it available as a free download for people, and some really creative stuff came out of that. And I realize it's an awful lot of work, but it was really, really cool. More people should ask Corbett about Gagman, and how the show even came about. What was the catalyst for creating Gagman podcast? Not enough love for Gagman.
All right, so Corbett, the question's been asked. Tell us about Gagman.
Well, Gagman came about because of you. Well,
me personally?
Well,
you, Liz,
directly or indirectly, and because of Jim. Because
what did I do?
I was reading Gygax magazine at the time, and like, oh yeah, this old school Renaissance thing is happening. That's really cool. I do like the old games. I started playing them again. And the one thing I always had a problem with, because when you're running a game regularly, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this because you've all run a campaign at some point, you get to Friday or Saturday or whatever your game night is, and you're like, oh crap, I've been working all week and I haven't had a chance to think about what's about to happen when they walk through that door. And yeah, it happens, and you can usually kind of fumble your way through it, but you have a long time, and sometimes it would be nice if somebody just had hey, here's an idea, try this. And I had written into I was reading. Sorry, back to the story. I was reading Gygax magazine. There was a really funny comic in it called Marvin the Mage. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was really cool and fun to follow. And there was an ad right below it that was for this podcast called Save or Die. Sorry, Save or Die. See, now you got me not saying it. Now I can't not say it.
Save or die, save or die, save or die, save or die.
So I wrote in and suggested the idea. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I probably said something silly and ridiculous. And Jim was on the podcast, I think as a guest host at the time, and he did pretty much. He said exactly the same thing Bruce Lee would say, which is "Do it, just do it."
Are you sure you're not thinking of the Nike commercials?
No, anytime somebody says, "Hey Jim, I was thinking about doing this thing. What do you think?" And he always comes back with, "Oh yeah, you should totally do that.
Yeah, do it, man, do it.
It sounds amazing.
It's time to sleep when we're dead. Go do
it." So that kind of prompted me to I guess I could just do it. So because Save or Die was going on at the time, I was like, I guess I could try to do it. And I had an idea, and I think we re-recorded the first show 2 times. I don't think anybody who was doing it with me at the time realized what I was trying to do. And once we got it recorded and put out there, then we're just like, well, I guess we'll do it again and then keep doing it. And yeah, one of the hosts on the show passed away, and it was really awkward. And there was a lot of, I don't know, it's just been kind of, but yeah, Liz is right. People keep bugging me all the time. You should do Gagman again.
It was a beautiful show. How did you manage to get, was it Michael Pereira? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah.
How did you get him on board with this? Or did you just go, hey, this would be really cool? And he said, okay.
Well, first the initial I think I can do old school, and I went and got Keep on the Borderlands because I still had my old D&D set. And I was like, hey, let me just run this online. And I did it because he was in New York. James is in Wisconsin, and Dave was down in Texas, and of course I'm in Wyoming. So we were all over the country. And the funny thing that was really neat about it all is they were all friends of mine at different points in my life. So they weren't friends at the same point in my life. They were all different tiered versions of me, which is interesting in a retrospective kind of way. So when we all got together, we started playing that, and of course they burned the entire dungeon to the ground like I think most people do. It seems like it always comes down to, well, what if we just set it on fire? Would that work?
We actually tried that in a game that Mike and I were in recently, and it wouldn't catch fire.
Damn you, Alex.
But yeah, after that, we started getting together for a weekly game session, and it was going pretty well. But then I just said, hey, what if I change it up and we do this instead? And we played so many different games at that point. I think they were still kind of like, oh, this is just another game. So I put out it's all a breakdown of how you break down the story, plot, conflict, characters, and they were just kind of in it. And I think the problem was James is great. He was really, really, really good at breaking the story. You know how somebody's like, oh, well, we could just do this, and he was excellent at that. And I had to teach him, don't do it to a point, but we have to have a show at the end. So he was very good at almost not breaking.
Would you believe me if I told you I've had that very conversation with Skeeter Green more than once? Okay, this is a convention game with 7 other people at it. Would you please not break the whole adventure in the first 5 minutes?
And it's just, guys, there's always a guy in the group who can pinpoint exactly oh, well, why don't we just summon those eagles and fly over there and drop the ring in? That'd be so much faster.
Why don't we just reverse the polarity of the neutron flow? It's like, well, if you're going to do it that way. Yeah.
And so put you on the spot. Will it come back? Is there any plans of it coming back?
I have in the back of my mind Somebody I kind of want to talk to, but I'm afraid to because I don't know.
So, in the words of Jim,
Just do it.
As long as it's not me.
No. Actually, I can throw it out there because I don't even know if he's listening to this. But Luau Lu, I was kind of wanting to contact Luau Lu.
That would be awesome, man. What are you talking about?
He's
Now
really
you have
cool.
to go do it.
Yeah.
But I
Alright,
don't
so-
know. He's got his own life too. so-
Luau Lu, call me.
so
Hang-
I'll stop making
Hang on,
it
I'm going to
awkward.
message him while we're talking.
So I'll stop making it awkward on Corbett in terms of putting him on the spot to give a date on something that he's just thinking in the back of his head. But Corbett, what would be a question that you would want to hear Mike answer?
And I would want to hear Mike answer.
Ho, ho, ho.
Make
Why are you
him squirm.
such a... Anyway.
Yeah, now make him squirm like everybody else has made you do.
I would
You
be
know-
loving this if I didn't know the gun was going to eventually swing around on me.
I don't know. Honestly, I ask Mike more questions than probably anybody. I'll call him up with like, "Hey, Mike, what do you think about this? What do you think if we do this? What if we do the entire show as puppets? What if we
Yes, a video Muppet version. Yes,
I think at one point I've probably thrown that at him.
Yeah, I think I pointed out we're not videos, so you know.
Just
think-
take our word for it. We're Muppets today.
Yeah, I've put out so many dumb questions to him, and he's like, "Okay, that's a possibility. Let's think about it and come back later." He's got for a guy who isn't a parent, he's very good at being parented or parenting.
Here, let me help you out, Corbett. Ask what you want to ask Mike is, what's it like to be married to the most wonderful woman in all of gaming, who's the
wow.
queen of the
Oh,
universe?
I get asked that all
Are
the time.
are you married to someone else besides me?
I get asked
Polygamy
that.
is illegal.
I get asked that all the time. That's not something nobody's ever asked me.
Oh, and does she have a sister?
You know, okay. I have a question. Would you ever? Am I asking this question, or am I posing the idea of the question?
no, ask it away.
Okay, Mike, would you ever consider rewriting a workable version of Time Ship?
Oh, that's a low blow, man.
With a actually. Well,
I'm
with a
looking around my
with
room and
a
have
decent-
tons of time travel things. I always like time.
with a
travel.
comparable paycheck for the work. Yeah, because I think there's a good game in there. I really do. I played it so much, like I mentioned on the show. You know, Ben
Oh,
and I
yeah.
and some others. So yeah, I mean, I'd do it. Sure.
Would you include an actual time ship?
Oh, Liz went right for it. Okay, yeah.
Right to the jugular.
Actually,
Dr.
I'd have
Dr.
one
Who
of the.
fan. Is
I'd
her-
rewrite up one of the adventures, the 3 free adventures, and one of them would be, you know, Jim, a Jim character demanding the actual time ship and trying to hold people hostage, demanding to be given the time ship, and everyone's having to explain, but there is no time ship. Bollocks!
time
It
ship-
says time ship!
The time ship lives in our hearts.
Time ship is friendship.
And that's when he opened fire.
Well, speaking of opening fire, Jim just said a minute ago that he knew the gun was going to get turned to him. So, Mike, you've got the gun now.
Jim, how the hell do you get so much done?
Mm.
Do you like sleep, or do you just live on Red Bulls and?
Well, yes.
Because I mean, you've got a full-time job, you run a game company, you do podcasts, you're occasionally, you know, guesting on other people's stuff. How do you do that?
No cat, no girlfriend, no family, no kids, no social life to speak of, and a massive introvert who actually enjoys what I did today, which was ship 120 books and take them to the post office. And you know, the normal stuff where what do you really know about how hard I work? You just see what I post on Facebook. So naturally I'm going to make myself look good on social media. Everybody does that.
That, and I see your product. You're mentioning, and this comes out, and this comes out, and we're doing this. And by the way, I got a full-time job, and there's this, and I just mailed out all this, and let's do a podcast. And that I notice that you're not making. You may be making up the full-time job, but you're not making up the rest.
Well, I have many character flaws, and you can ask that question too. There's a long list, but among them are not insincerity or lack of enthusiasm. That's all I got. If I'm in, I'm in. You know me.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I still wish I had half your energy, but anyway.
And
I'm turning 62 in a couple of weeks, so that energy's not getting any more.
No.
And
Congratulations.
All right,
What do you mean you don't have a kid or a pet? You take Tim for a walk practically every day, I'm sure.
Ooh, I'm staying out of that line of fire.
And I cat sit for Tim, and we have a work dog at work, and I get my licks in.
Oh yeah.
all right, and so Jim, I'll let you take the shot at me. Is there anything that you want to know about me, or is there anything that in general that I should have asked the whole group that I didn't? You get both options.
No, I Mike passed around the email, and I have a real fondness and admiration for what you try to do, because it's what I want to do, and I unfortunately don't have the temperament to resolutely focus on the positive and the constructive in gaming. I'm a little, I'm human too, and I've got a Scott-Irish temper, and I'm Tim Cass' best friend, so part of that is just hanging out with somebody who's more of a curmudgeon than me or has a worse temper than me, so I can feel good about me. I better say that to his face before he hears some of this podcast. But but I'm a big fan of what you're trying to do here. Big fan of all you got to do is turn on Facebook or Twitter, and they're full of the planet's. I mean, our culture's all amped up right now. The planet's full of everybody with faux rage over She-Hulk and what have you. And I've worked I think joy and happiness are choices, and I've worked very hard on myself to do that. And so I like the focus that you're doing this podcast with. Let's talk about the good stuff. Let's talk about the positive stuff, because that's the only answer. You can't fight fire with fire. It doesn't work. Never has.
And yeah, it's something that's difficult to do at any point. Like as much as anybody else, can get sucked into a nerd fight. Like there's been times I've been on Twitter, I'm like, no, I gotta turn this off, because I'll say something. It's not any amazing character benefit of mine. It's more of just being aware of, this won't go any better, so we're done now.
Can I add an addendum to that?
Sure.
Seeing that you were planning on focusing on the positive really hit me, because right before you sent that email to us, I had been on a panel at a convention here in Texas that was basically about DMing and gaming and that sort of thing. And one of the panelists and some of the audience were sitting around, and we were talking after the panel, and the word grognard came up. And I
did an entire episode on that.
Yeah, and I was so surprised at the level of animosity there was. And I was kind of like going, well, why? And they started talking all these horrible interactions they had, mostly online, with self-prescribed old schooler grognards. And I, just tried to, and I felt like I had to really promote the positive. And I think that's a good and laudable goal. I'm glad you're doing that, because sometimes the positive can get lost in the vitriol and the anger, and as you say, the nerd rage that gets thrown around.
Yeah. When I did the episode on grognard, I was focusing on the origins of the word, which is really interesting if you're not familiar with the history of the word. The
Napoleonic origins.
Even before that, do you know where it comes from before the Napoleonic?
No, I don't know that it predated Napoleonic.
Yeah, it was originally a French word for a pig grumbling.
Ah,
the noise that a pig makes when it grumbles was called grognard. And
that's cool.
It continued to evolve, and Napoleon used it because he was saying that all his the special guard there that he had grumbled like pigs.
Yeah. They were grumbling pigs, but they had the right to grumble. They were
Exactly.
proud of
That's awesome, man. You just gave me what I'm going to talk to Tim about tomorrow morning.
it.
But I'm just my voice just went a little bit. But yes, I wanted to thank you guys for coming on because, like I said, I am trying to focus on the folks that have been doing things in a positive way that made me smile while I'm going through it. And you guys over many times, not to make myself sound really young, but over many years now have done that on multiple podcasts. So thank you guys for doing it. Thank you for taking the time to come chat with me. And where should everybody go to find both the Save for Half as well as the individuals? Because we didn't even talk about anything that Jim does, other than the mention of all the stuff that Jim is doing and keeping busy with. But there could be an entire episode just talking about everything that you do, Jim, and the products that you're putting out. But where should everybody find what you guys do and
Send your emails to the Save or Die podcast at gmail.com.
And watch Kamal Best.
No, don't do that.
Well, we're at saveforhalf.com. If you want to pop over and look at our podcasts, we're up to 42, 43 now. Well, plus the side shows, which make about 60, I think, all told.
And there's a contact form on that website that works for everybody except DM Kojo.
Right. For some reason, it hates his emails. But for my steampunk superhero RPG, I can be found at victoriousrpg.com, as well as Facebook and the usual suspects.
Yeah, you can find Save for Half on Facebook as well. And it's just facebook.com/saveforhalf. And so you can find us there. Mike and I have a Facebook page called DM Mike and DM Liz. And I do not remember offhand what the Facebook
You can find it
address
from
on that is.
from the Save for Half page, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can follow Liz too. My wife follows Liz. I swear, I don't know what it is. Like, oh, what's Liz say about that? What's Liz been doing? Like,
It's all the cat
who's
comments.
following Liz like this?
People who like cats.
It's
Yes, if you like cats and you like posts about food, then my page is the page to be.
my wife thinks so.
You like food and liquids? That's amazing.
We should hang
That's
out.
so much in common.
Oh, Liz, she's just so Liz today.
Corbett, where will they find you? And what are you doing?
Well, Gagman Podcast still exists. I've been putting it lapsed because I backed off a lot, and a bunch of other Dems of stuff happened, but I put it back up. It's on Buzzsprout, so yeah, you could still listen to it. Still a fun show. A lot of weird laughs, a lot of goofy things, and Liz is right. Herding cats. I typically would record about a 4-hour show, and splice that down to about an hour. So it's just the funny bits. Swear.
You're much more diligent than I am. Like I told you guys at the top of the show, this is just going to get dropped in between the intro and outro and no editing at all being done. Jim, over to you.
I'm on Facebook personally, and I also run the Mutant Crawl Classics role-playing game Facebook page. So it's where you can get me on social media. And if, for me personally, if an endless stream of Doctor Who mad science projects and Star Trek bother you and gaming crap, I will not be the least. My feelings will not be hurt if you unfollow me. But that's what you're in for, and some cats. The game company that I run is Mud Puppy Games, which can be found at mudpuppygames.com. And for some reason, now that I think about it, DM Gojo has contacted me through the contact form on that website, the mudpuppygames.com website. So I wonder, I have to think about that.
Well, we'll just have to tell him to send all emails for Save for Half to Mud Puppy Games. So.
And I'm a member of a larger group of independent game publishers and something called the Independent Publishers Union, which is not really a union, and we picked that name before the Paizo workers unionized. So It's just 6 guys who get together and with their game companies and sell stuff, share a booth and sell stuff at game conventions. We'll all be at GameholeCon here next week. So come see us.
It's not a union, it's a funyon.
Good stuff. All right. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming on. I will try to bother Mike and get him to email me all the links so I have them all correct for the show notes, and that way everybody can follow them through. And yeah, like I said earlier, it's been awesome that everybody I've reached out to has been able to come on, and I'm so happy you guys are able to make time to come and chat with me. And yeah, thank you very much for that and for what you guys do. It's been awesome.
Thank you for asking us.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so very much to Mike, Liz, Jim, and Corbett for coming onto the show. I'm going to provide all the links to all the things that you heard talked about and the ways that you can reach out to them and where you can hear their shows down in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk to you. As I said in the interview, it's kind of been really cool getting to talk and interact with these people who I've admired from afar for a while. So again, thank you so much for coming on. Next week, I'm going to be sitting down with Matt Finch, Dan Proctor, Runehammer, and Gavin Norman. If there are any questions that you have for those 4 amazing people, send them my way. I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest, but I'm looking forward to it. All right, folks, that wraps up this episode of the Redcaps Podcast. I hope you enjoyed, you learned something, and that you were eager to come back for more. www.theredcaps.net has all the links to all the ways to contact me, such as email, SpeakPipe, a telephone number, Discord, so many more. I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. Thank you so very much for listening. And remember, never let your caps dry out. Stay safe. Have fun. We'll talk again soon.